many years. I forgot to mention that we do have, we record these sessions so we can later share them if somebody wants a saved recording of the event. Let me just move this. So yeah, my name is Abdulrazak Adam. I'm a PhD researcher, and since about 2 years ago, or 1.5 years ago, I've been the CEO and co-founder of Avidnote, together with my other co-founder, Mahmoud. And we're developing an application for researchers to make it easier to work and write research papers online. So before I can talk about the application and the way that we try to improve the research process, I'm just going to talk a little bit about the problem itself. So today, as most of you know, the average researcher reads about 300 papers per year. So we do a lot of reading. Most of the things that we do is actually read papers and try to understand the papers because they're so complicatedly written. Because there's so many papers and there's so little time, what has happened over the years, as the blue graph is showing, the minutes that we spend per article is actually going down, whereas the number of papers that we are reading is going up. So this is a huge problem. It's basically we're drowning in information, but we're really starving for knowledge. So we're thirsty for knowledge, but we're drowning in all of this information. So it's a huge problem, and it's not a new problem. It's a problem that has existed for many years. So if you look, for instance, back in the 1940s, 50s, you see a picture here of Albert Einstein in his office. And if you look at the office, it's filled with papers, stacks of papers that he has printed out. Now, even though this is maybe 60 years ago, it's essentially the same, or 70 years ago, it's essentially the same today. You have all of these papers that people print out, and they take notes by hand, physically. And then you have to find your papers, you have to find all of your notes, and it becomes sort of a difficult process, specifically when it comes to sharing the notes that you have and organizing them in an easy way. So this is what Avidnote is trying to do, is trying to create an application that makes it easy to keep track of all of your research notes, the things that you write in a collaborative way online. So this whole process can be digitized. We can make it into a digital platform, which would make it easier to search your notes. It would make it easier to organize all of your notes. And also it would make it easier to collaborate with others so you can work together with other people in the platform. So what is Avidnote? Avidnote is an application that enables researchers to write and organize research notes online. So it's web-based. That means you don't need to download anything. You don't need to download it on the App Store. You can just go to the website on avidnote.com. You register. It's 100% free. We have a free version. We also have a premium version. I can talk about that later. But the free version has all of the functionalities. So once you sign up, you go into the application, and from there you can upload papers and you can start annotating or taking notes of the research papers that you have. So the interface looks like this in the top, where you have the paper on the one side, on the right side, and you have your text on the left side. And when you go back to the overview, you can see all of your papers and you can see all of your notes, and you can also search through them. So if you have like hundreds of notes, you can search through and you can find that specific note you're looking for, or you can use tags to sort of categorize your research. So if you're working together with somebody else, you're working together with someone, for instance, Hassan, and you look at Hassan and he has like 10 papers, you can click on his tag and you can see all of his papers. Or if you're working with someone like Sarah, you look at her papers, you can see all of her papers. So it's an easy way to sort of organize everything. So Avidnote brings together all of these parts of the writing process. Finding a new paper, you can do that in Avidnote. You can find new papers, but you can also take notes on the papers and you can keep track of your references. So if you're using Zotero or EndNote or Mendeley, you can use those software together with Avidnote, and they're compatible. So if you look at Avidnote and the sort of the three use cases or the three different steps that we're solving for, in the first step, when you're finding a new paper, and I think all of us know this, you have to go to a research database like Web of Science or Scopus or Google Scholar. In the second step, we have to keep track of all of our references. Once we found a research paper, we use something like Zotero or EndNote. And in the third step, we need to take notes. And this is where it's difficult today because there's no specific software that has been developed for note-taking for academia. except for Avidnote. If you look at other note-taking software like Evernote or OneNote, they are note-taking software, but they're generic and general, so they're not specific to academic writing. Whereas Avidnote is. So if we look at this now, we can see that in the application on the left side, you can see the text that I've written, the notes. And on the right side, you have the PDF where I've made a lot of annotations and sort of highlighted text and removed text and so forth. And if you go to the overview page, you can see all of the papers, like I talked about before. And then in the middle page, you see all of the notes. And the tags can be used to sort of either to keep track of different drafts. So you have the first draft, the second draft, or you can use them to tag different areas like construction papers here, or BIM papers or theoretical papers. So it's really up to you. It's pretty flexible how you create them. And it's in a way, it's a way to solve this problem we have in academia that I think a lot of you recognize, which is if you're working together with someone, or if you have a professor, if you're a PhD student, or you have somebody you're working with, you send in your corrections, and then you make edits, and then you send a new draft, and then the person makes new corrections, and then before you can send it in, I want to look at it, and it just goes on and on like this. And of course, we have the same problem when we have drafts. So we think we're finished with a draft, and then we name the other draft final, and then we have final 2, and then we have final 3, and then final 5, and it's never the final paper because there's always drafts going on. So with Avidnote, you can use the tagging system to save all of your drafts. So you can use like draft 1, draft 2, draft 3, and then final paper. So it creates an easier way to structure sort of the way that you look at your papers. So we can just go into the app actually for a few moments just to see how it looks like. So now I'm logged into Avidnote, and I have a lot of papers. So on the left side, this shows all of the papers that I've saved, and I can scroll down and there's more papers. Here you can see all of the notes that I've written. So if I write something, it will find the specific text that I'm searching for. So in this case, I wrote note. If I write IoT, there's only one note that has that text. So it immediately searches through everything in one go. So it becomes easy to find all of your notes in one place. And then you can, of course, use the tags to organize everything. So if I'm working together with someone, for instance, Mahmoud here, and I want to look at all his papers, I can click on it and I will see his papers. If I click on Adam, which is me, then I'll see my papers that are saved here. And if I have a tag for our entire research team, I can see everything that the people in the team have put up. So it becomes an easy way to sort of organize things and say, can you read this? I read this, and so forth. And there's other ways of using tags as well. You can, for instance, you can create a tag for things you need to read now or things you need to read in the future, or like all of the papers that deal with theory or like method. And once you go into a paper, so for instance, if I just open up a paper, here now I'm inside the PDF view. And in the PDF view, I can read the text. I can, of course, zoom in and zoom out. And I can also highlight text. So you can use different colors if you like that. So for instance, yellow could be something you need to revise. Whereas if you have another color like red, it could be things that you should perhaps not accept. And if you're editing text, you can also sort of not just highlight, but you can also redact. So you can say, remove this. So if you're sending to someone and you say, okay, don't read this part, it's not relevant, you can sort of redact. If you have an iPad or a sort of a surface board or surface, you can use the draw tool. So if you click on the pen, you can start drawing, and you can draw as you wish, sort of, highlight things and so forth with the pen. And this is useful not when you're on the computer, but if you're, for instance, using an iPad or something similar to that, and you prefer to draw with your hand. And if you have something you want to add to a specific paper, or if you want to comment some research data you have, you can click on the image and then you can upload an image. For instance, if I were to upload like this framework, it then uploads the image that I uploaded into the paper that I'm reading or the PDF that I'm commenting on. This can be useful if you have like graphs or something, research data that you want to comment on. And the final thing I want to talk about the actual PDF system is that you can use notes. So if I click here, inside the actual PDF, you can use notes. So this is a note, for example, that I've saved here. And then if I create a different note here, I'll press the note symbol again, and I say another note, for example. And of course, I can create different colors for them, and I can also use different symbols. So in this case, this signifies that I'm okay with this section, so I made it into a check mark. But I can also make it into, for instance, some other symbol and say this is not good and make an X. So it's an easy way to sort of visually comment on your papers. And also, if you prefer to print it out, you can actually do that by clicking on the print symbol. It will actually give you the option to save as a PDF or to print on a printer. So if you just want to print it out and have it on your computer, you can do that. Or if you actually want to print it out physically and with all of the notes and all of the highlights, it will do that as well. And in the PDF system, you can also click on this little note here, or this little icon, and click on annotations. And here you can see all of the different annotations that we've made. Every highlight, every comment, this is a note, another note, and it will skip to the different pages that you have saved. The same thing if you're using bookmarks. So if you have different chapters, you can create one chapter and call this chapter X. And then you can go to another place and save a different bookmark and call it chapter Y, for instance. And then when you click, it will take you to the different places in that document. So it becomes a very easy way to sort of annotate and take notes on research papers. Similarly, on this side here, you can write your text. In this case, I've just written some text here. If I want, I can copy paste, and it will continue down like this. And if you want to add it to a specific tag, you just click on the tag symbol. In this case, it's added to Adam's papers and our research papers, but I can add it to something else. For instance, if I want to add it, so let's call it science, and I'll save that. It will create a new tag that's called science, and it will be part of that specific tag. If we now go back to the main view, here is where we can upload our papers. So the most normal way, or the best way to upload a paper, is to click on the blue button. It will ask you to upload your files. You can upload several PDFs. In this case, I'm just going to upload one, so I have one saved here. When I click upload, it will then upload that PDF, and it will take me to the PDF view. And just like normal, I can write my text here on the left side and start taking notes and stuff on the right side. If I go back again, there's another way to find a paper, and it's by searching here. So if I search, for instance, my name here, I will then be able to find all of the papers that this keywords corresponds to. So in this case, my name. So you can find all of the ones that have a sort of a PDF symbol, means that you can upload that one by clicking on it. If it only has a plus symbol, it means it can import a reference, but not the PDF. And this feature is still very much in beta mode. So it will sometimes say that a PDF is available, but because the API that we're using has the PDF is not actually there. And this happens when you go to research databases like Google Scholar. It will tell you the PDF is there, and then when you click, it's not actually there. So this is a problem that we're working on fixing. But for now, it works most of the time. And if it's not working, then you can always use the manual upload. And if you've already saved a lot of references from, for example, Zotero, you can click on the import reference button and then upload file. And from here, you can just upload your references. So in this case, I've already exported some references. And this is very easy. You go to Zotero, you click export bibliography if you're using Zotero or Mendeley, and you'll save it as a bibtex file. Once you've done that, you can just open that bibtex file, and it will actually upload it, as you can see. And all of the papers, like these papers, come from my reference library. When I click on them, it will only have the reference info. If I want the paper, I have to upload the PDF as well. And to change the reference information, like for instance, this paper that we uploaded here before, we just click on this symbol here, and then we can change the name of the author. In this case, this is like from 2017. And then the title here and whatever research paper type it is, and then just save, and it will give you the new reference info. And if you want to save it back to Mendeley or Zotero or any reference management software that you have, you just click on your name, you go to the settings page, and under Manage My Data, you can click Export Data. And from here, you can export your references and save it to another reference management software, like Zotero, for instance. So this is basically a brief overview of the Avidnote application and how it works. I haven't covered some other things like deleting and stuff, but they're fairly easy to find for deleting notes and similar functionalities. The last thing that I want to talk about in terms of this presentation is a little bit about the response, because Avidnote is a new application. It's existed for about 1.5 years now. And we've had a very positive response from universities and from academia. So if you look, for instance, we find several universities have linked to us on their official websites. Perhaps the most famous university is Princeton University, that links to us and recommends us on one of their library guides. The same can be said about University of Connecticut and Florida State University and many other universities. And it's been used by thousands of researchers now from many different universities in Asia, Europe, America, Africa, basically everywhere at this point. So if you have any specific questions about the application, I saw somebody had to leave, but if you have any comments, you can just write in the comments and we'll get back to you later on. So if you have to leave for another meeting, that's no problem. And then when it comes to the plans and the data, how we handle the data, as I said before, Avidnote is completely free for individual use. So we used to have a limit on the articles. We don't have that anymore. So you can put up as many articles as you want. We do have a storage limit though, because storage costs. So for an individual user, we have a storage capacity of 300 megabytes, which is about at least, I would say, around 300 articles, but it could go up to 1,000 depending on how large the PDF files that you're uploading are. In terms of a group use, if you want to have like a research team-based account, an account that many people can use at the same time, then you need to buy a premium account. A premium account costs $20 per month or $200 per year. And that cost can be also taken from the research budget of the research team that you're working with. In terms of larger licenses, so if you're buying Avidnote or for a department or for a group, then it depends on how many people, but essentially there will be a discount. So instead of $20 per month for a group, it will be something more like $10 per month. In terms of a larger university or organization, it really depends on the size of the university, so you would have to contact us to get a specific price. In terms of the data on Avidnote, all of the data that is placed on the platform, and I can't stress this enough, is all of that data belongs to you. So we're not Facebook. We don't use our users' data. Everything that is put up on the platform, you own, and we don't own any of it. So if you want to take it out, you can take it out. All of the data is also private. That means that we don't share it with other organizations. We don't sell your content to other third parties. Is what I mean. Like we don't have an ad-based model. So if you look at something like a social media site, like Facebook, they share that data with third parties because they sell ads. We don't sell any ads on Avidnote, neither on the free version or the premium version. So there's no reason to share the data. And in the last part, the data can also be retrieved. So we don't have any data lock-in. With other words, we don't lock in the data into the platform. So if you want to take it out, you can take it out. It's your data. So if you have your references or your notes, you can export them and you can use them on your own computer, or if you use a different software of some kind, you can use them there. So it's completely sort of easy to try. And if you don't like it, you can just jump out. In terms of future development, currently we're working on making the collaboration part more easy to use. So in the next version, which we hope to be ready in about in August or September, you'll be able to create the projects and then put different papers and different notes and data into projects and not just papers. And you'll also be able to sort of share those notes that you have created and the different papers that you've had with people in your research teams. So if you're familiar with something like Slack, it will have similar functionality where you can create a team and add people to that team, and then you can share projects within that team. So it creates a much easier way to work online. And then what we're really excited for, which is some news that came recently, is that Avidnote has been accepted to the OpenAI private beta. So for those of you who don't know what OpenAI is, OpenAI is a project that was started by a number of Silicon Valley tech giants, among them the CEO of LinkedIn, but also Elon Musk funded it. And essentially, it's the world's largest AI system for language encoding. So you can use this API to translate things. You can use it to generate text. There's been some incredible new developments within this OpenAI system. Currently, it's still in private beta. They only share it with organizations they think will use them for a useful purpose, and we've been chosen as one of those private beta testers. So the way that we intend to use Avidnote, I'm going to talk about in the next slide. But in terms of the capabilities of OpenAI and GPT-3, there have been cases, for instance, where the AI has been able to write articles that looks exactly like a human, and it's been impossible for other humans to tell that it was a computer that wrote the article. So in terms of the implications for research, it's huge. For one thing, it could make it easier to read complicated research papers. So for example, one of the use cases that they show on their website, if I just show the video, is that you can put in some complicated text, for instance, like a legal agreement, and then you can tell the AI to translate that into normal English, and it will translate it to normal English. Another way that you can use it to summarize large swaths of text. So you can give it a lot of text and you can ask it to give you a summary, and the AI will give you a summary that's grammatically correct and that more or less captures the inputted text that you put it in. So we're very excited to start developing things with this protocol. The first thing that we want to develop is an ability to generate literature reviews. Currently, the literature review is probably the most time-intensive part of the research writing process. So if you're writing a literature review, you have to find all of these different papers first, and then you have to summarize them, and you have to put them into context in terms of your paper. So much of this could be automized. Not all of it could obviously be automized, but a lot of it can. So what you could do is you could, for instance, search for different keywords, identify all of the papers that is relevant to your paper, and then you can put it into the AI, which we will integrate into Avidnote. So when you press the button, it will give you a literature review based on those papers that you put in. And then, of course, you have to go into that review and edit it and remove things and add things, but it will save a lot of time in terms of how quickly you can write a literature review based on the papers that you're interested in. And then you'll also be able to generate summaries and generate conclusions. So for instance, if you have a paper that you've written, the conclusion chapter is really just a summary of that. It's just a summary of that paper. So in the conclusions, you don't put in any new information. You essentially give the most relevant parts of your research papers and explain it in a way that captures what you want to do with it. So you could essentially generate the conclusion chapter with this AI as well. You could generate the abstract as well. As what you do is you teach the algorithm how to create an abstract from a lot of different papers. And based on these millions of data that this AI has collected, it will be able to understand how to create that abstract. And that's how the GPT-3 model works right now. It has been trained with the whole internet. So for those of you familiar with machine learning algorithms, they learn by reinforcement. So they look at one text and another text and a third text, and they try to understand what's the similarities between these texts. So this is how the algorithm works. And then the third use case that we want to use it for is for smart citations. In other words, if you cite someone right now, or if a lot of people cite your paper, there's no way of knowing how many of those people who cited you actually agree with you, and how many people disagree with what you're saying. And with AI, this would become possible. And it's called sentiment analysis, where the AI is trained to understand if somebody's criticizing something or somebody is praising something and speaking about it in a good fashion. And sometimes it's not possible to tell. And to be honest, for humans, sometimes it's not possible to tell. But essentially what it would do is in those cases where it is possible to tell, it would give you a number. So for this paper, for example, let's call it paper X. It would say this paper X has 100 people who cite it. Of those 100 people, 50 people agree with the author, 20 people disagree, and the rest is undetermined. So it will give you a figure depending on the paper, how many people agree with the paper and how many people disagree. And you could also do it with the author. So you could get a figure of how many people agree with an author and how many people disagree with that author. So I think there's a lot of exciting things you can do with this AI capabilities. And the final part is the first thing that I mentioned, is that the algorithm could make it easier to read complicated text. So if you put in a research paper that's very obviously in complicated language, it could generate a much easier to understand summary that essentially a 15-year-old could read and understand. So that's also a way to make it a bit easier to communicate our research, and a bit easier, honestly, to be able to digest the research ourselves. And with that, I think I can conclude. If you have any questions, I'll be more than happy to answer. We do have a moderator here as well, Mahmoud, who has, I think, can help out as well. So if you have any questions in the chat, you can write there, or if you want to speak out, you can just raise your hand, and you'll be able to speak directly. Thank you for listening.